Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. And today Amos Zweig is here on a new video conversation. And today we thought about discussing a quote from an ancient philosopher living in the 1st to 2nd century after Christ. Epictetus, was that his name?
Epictetus.
Epictetus, right. Who made some interesting and remarkable quotes about life, about a happy life, and some important reflections in that regard. So Amos, if you could try to explain or summarize that quote, that would be great.
Yes, thank you very much for having me on. So I will paraphrase the quote because it was in German. What Epictetus said in this quote is, if you have something that you love or value highly, then you should always keep in mind the thing that it actually is. And he gave 2 examples of this. So if you have a pot for cooking that you really like, then you should always think to yourself, this is a pot that I like. And so then if the pot breaks, you will not be surprised. And also similarly, if you have a wife or a kid that you love, then you should think, this is my wife or my kid that I love very much. But you should keep in mind that they are a human being. And so you will not be surprised if they die one day. So that's the quote that we have read just before. Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry, just the mute button. I forgot to unmute it. Yes, thank you, Amos. He made some good or important and interesting remarks there. Recognizes something as it actually is, and it seems to be very true indeed that this is important to do in life, because it is easy for people to presuppose or think that the pleasures that they enjoy in life at the current moment will stay with them forever. Now, of course, if you ask them, will this actually be permanent? Of course, they will answer, no, of course not. One day I'm going to die. But sometimes it seems that people can act as if there will be no tomorrow if they are doing lots of things at a party, for instance. And it seems to be a healthy reflection to understand that things that you are enjoying right now will one day perish, and one day you will be dead. You will be in the grave, and 200 years from now you will not be on this earth, and everyone around you will probably have died as well, and you will be completely forgotten in society. So that puts things into a perspective. And furthermore, if a person is young, he might think that, I'm going to do this or that and the other thing and enjoy this good, enjoy that good. But he should also keep in mind that one day he's going to grow an old person, and he must think, okay, what kind of life should I live? Because it's not going to last forever. What kind of life should I live which will give me true happiness and lasting joy? That's a very important question, indeed one of the most important questions, I would say. So I think he's onto something there, this philosopher.
Yes, I would absolutely agree. I think it's easy, or it's tempting to try to neglect certain less pleasant aspects of life or of reality. And I think my initial reaction was, wow, this must be quite hard to always keep this fact in mind, to remain aware that everything is finite and everything is perishable and nothing will remain forever. And I think you already made a good second step thought from this first thought, which is not only that you will not be surprised when something comes to an end, as Epictetus said, and then you will not be very grieved or very troubled or emotional. But also it should get you on this path of thinking, yes, what do I want to do with my life, or what kind of a life would I want to live, or would I be proud of having lived when I look back on it? And so I think this this thought, or this act of just being aware of what everything around you really is a door that moves very quickly into very deep thoughts about life and about reality and all that.
Exactly, that's very true. There are important thoughts and reflection that people should consider. And also thinking about the aspect of this concerning death. If there is some relative or friend of you who has passed away, generally speaking, people will have grief over that, and they will be very saddened by that. And of course, to have grief and sadness itself, that is natural, because you have lost somebody that you value a lot in your life. But at the same time, it seems to be rational to recognize that, yes, this was inevitable. Sooner or later, that person would have died. Now, of course, there might be some sudden or unnatural death, like if somebody dies in a car accident. And it's very understandable that people will react in a very shocking way when something like that happens, because that's not supposed to happen, to put it that way. But that death is inevitable is something that people and they are aware of it, because they know that, well, we are not living here immortally. One day we will pass away as well. So to react upon other people dying, I suppose would the healthy thing to do there is to confront the grief and undergo it, because of course grief is there. One is going to suffer if the person was somebody close to you, but one has to sort of deal with it in a way that is helpful and healthy, and also realize that this is indeed the world we live in. Yeah, so I suppose these are some considerations with that. And also, as you pointed out, this is a very general consideration about life in general. How should you live your life? You should always think about, okay, what is going to happen to me in the future, and have that in mind, not assume that this what I'm experiencing now is going to be the all and end all of life, but there is actually some future which I have to take into account, and that goods are perishable.
Yes, and also I think I was searching a word before, and what Epictetus is saying here, that you will carry the hardness of life, or the hardship that you will experience, you will carry it with composure. You will because it doesn't hit you by surprise, because you are aware throughout all the time that such hardship can arise, and probably will arise in some form or another. And so I think it's a good advice, though I think it might be, as I said, very hard to actually do it, or to actually live in this way. But I guess also, as with other virtues, it becomes easier with training. So if you make a habit, as he suggests, of always looking at everything for what it truly is, and not trying to shield yourself from the negative aspects of reality by ignoring them, then I guess you will learn to some extent to live in this manner.
Right, yes. And I also had this this thought that realizing that certain things you're experiencing might be perishable could also be liberating in some situations. If you're experiencing something that you find very, you could say, pressing on you, like let's say you are in a school, and let's say that there has been rumors about you, and you are extremely afraid of what people are going to think about you because some scandal has happened at school, for instance. People would be extremely concerned about what is happening to them right there and right now in that moment. But when you think about it, 2 years from then, 3 years from then, everyone will have forgotten it. All the dramas and the scandals at school or some other places are, virtually all of them are forgotten when time passes. So that's when you think about it, that might be consoling. That okay, right now I'm experiencing a scandal. Perhaps there is some social awkward situation which I really don't like, but it might be it might be a consolation that soon this will all be forgotten, and there will be a completely new life scenario for me. People who are having scandals who many years later, if they think about it then, they'll perhaps just laugh at it and think, oh, that's so many years ago. Now we're all friends if we have a fight back in the day or something. So that shows how things really change with time.
Yes, I actually think that's a very, very important and very important point that you made here for anyone probably. And I just reminded me of a scenario that I know myself, or that probably everybody knows, when you are when you are kind of in the teenage years, and then perhaps someday there is a girl or a boy that you have a huge crush on them, but then you are terrified of telling them, of doing something about it, because it might be very awkward and people might make fun of you and the whole class might make fun of you. And I think in that scenario, having this statement in mind can really help you to just, you can be more free to do the thing that is really important, or that you truly believe would be the good or the brave thing to do. Because if it goes wrong, then it will be, or all the discomfort, which is only for a certain time, will go away in the end. But if you look back on your life, then you will be proud that you did the courageous thing. Whereas if you don't do it because you are afraid of the scandal or of the stupid jokes, then when you look back, you will be you will regret that you didn't do something which could have been a very good thing. And so in that sense, I really believe that having this idea in mind can help to liberate you to do the right thing, because you are less concerned with possible consequences of this or that or something else happening.
Yes, that's a very, very good point. And I think it, as you say, very helpful to think in that way. And as the philosopher said, it's realizing what it is. If there is a rumor, or you're experiencing some, let's say, a breakup with a girlfriend, which you find extremely difficult to endure, then you could think that, well, what is this actually? Realizing it for what it is, it's simply a temporary thing that will pass, and sooner or later you will just have gotten by it. You will have forgotten it, or just think nothing of it, or just thinking that, oh, it doesn't matter anymore. So that's an example of realizing something for what it is, a very temporary thing that will pass. So yes, having that thought in mind, I agree. I think that will be very, very helpful. And that's something that everyone can think about in their everyday lives. All the concerns people have about what will other people think of them, in so many cases. Think about, well, what will happen 10 years from now? Are people still going to make that a problem for you? No, probably not. It's going to be fine. So it's easy to fall into a trap that, oh no, what is happening now, that is the ultimate condition in my life. That is something that I'm enslaved to permanently. But of course it's not. And also you could think about it in the positive way, that okay, perhaps it's difficult right now, but think about how you can grow on it, and in the future you will, because of this experience, you will be a stronger person in some way. That's also another consideration to think about.
Yes, I I think it's really also because it can help you to just overcome this kind of freezing fear. So, or also this very, yes, tearing your hair out about something. So for example, I made a stupid mistake today, which I sent an email to a lot of people and I didn't put their email address in the blind copy so everybody could see all the email addresses. And so I thought, oh no, this is so stupid and so bad. And then I also kind of thought, yes, now it's very unpleasant, and maybe even something unpleasant will occur out of it. Maybe someone, I don't know, someone's email address will end up in a place that it shouldn't have ended up, and then I would be to blame. And so it was an uncomfortable thought, but then I also thought, yes, well, it will pass, however, and it will not be the end of my life. So it will, after this, something else will come, and it will be still okay. Or also maybe if you, yes, if you are trying, I don't know, if you are very much afraid that the state might confiscate your property or take your money or something, then you can also think about, yes, well, what is this thing really? And it might just happen, and then I will not have this money. And so that will be unpleasant, but it's not so like, just sometimes when you think about something that you are afraid of, then you cannot think past the fear. You just see the fear, and then this fear is like the all destroying thing, and you cannot see that after this also something else will come again, even if it is unpleasant. And I think this view of Epictetus will help to view past the momentary fear.
Yes, indeed. And on a related note, there might be situations where there was some awkward situation, some scandal, and perhaps you embarrassed yourself and other people reacted to that. And a person could easily fall into the trap of thinking, oh no, what will this person think of me? He's going to always think about this for the rest of his or her life. But in reality, that person is probably going to forget it a few years into the future. Perhaps there might be some situation where you are meeting and a person you knew back in high school, and you think, oh no, that is a person who witnessed something embarrassing I did back then. Oh, she's going to remember it so well now. And then, or perhaps I offended her or offended him back then. Oh, he's still angry, or she's still angry. But probably if you could tell them about it, they'll just laugh, or perhaps not even remembering it, because it's such a small thing. But it's easy to blow up a small thing into a big thing, because it might feel that way in the moment. But the persons whom you think will think about it so long, in reality, they'll probably just forget it after a short time. So that's also a related consideration to this, which shows again that certain things or things in general here on Earth will pass away, they will perish, and many things will perish very shortly after you experience them.
Yes, I just had one quick thought, which is people say the internet never forgets anything. So if there is maybe some stupid video of you or some stupid photo of some embarrassing moment, and then this makes its way into the internet on Facebook or on YouTube or on some social media platform, and then many people, I think, today have this fear that this somehow changes this thing that we were talking about, that now when the photo is on the internet, then it will actually never be forgotten, or after 40 years, it could just be picked out of the internet again. Someone will find it, and then when you are running for prime minister, then everybody will laugh at you because you did something stupid in high school or something. And I'm not so sure about this, but I would be interested what you think.
Yeah, that's a good question about the whole internet phenomenon there. Yes, I think in many cases those scandals back in the day on the internet will be forgotten, but there might be some cases where it wouldn't, where there are some cases where, well, that will actually follow you through your life. That there might be some situations where that is happening, and also you have the situation if you're running for president, for instance. The opponents will try to find anything from your past to embarrass you and make sure that you will not get elected, as was very much the case with the election of Donald Trump and all the things people try to find about him in the past. And that has happened with presidential candidates in general. So yeah, I think there might be some things from the past that might return to your life again, but that depends. And I think in general people shouldn't be that much concerned about it. I think sometimes it does happen, but try to be courageous and think that this too will pass probably. So I suppose that would be my answer to this.
Yes, I also think the same way as you just said. I think especially if somebody has a motive to try to sabotage you, then they will go digging for anything that they can find. But I think if you have done a lot of stupid things like everybody has during their life, then you also grow stronger from them. And if someone comes with something that is 20 years past and you have already 1,000 times defended yourself and said why you did it or how it was stupid and something, and then it comes up again, then I think I would just be pretty annoyed and would just ask this person, really, is that the only thing that you have a problem with me, is something that I did 30 years in the past? So I have changed a lot since then. Have you never done anything stupid in your life? So I really don't think that these things are very relevant then to the present if they are so far in the past. It might be a bit uncomfortable, but I think you could come over it quite easily.
Right, yes. So those would be some, you could say, healthy thoughts to consider when such scenarios are brought in, because I think a lot of people, probably the vast majority, will experience some huge scandal or issue in their lives, and everybody has done something stupid in the past. So this is highly relevant for people to consider, from people in high school who are so concerned about how people think about them 10 years from then, to elderly people, and all kinds of persons. So yes, I think this knowledge that this too will pass, it's a healthy thing to consider and think about. Also, when it comes to this principle of things perishing, when it comes to death, it seems that death is sort of the elephant in the room in many cases, that people will act as if they are going to live forever and what is happening now is so important, but they are forgetting the elephant in the room with it, which is death. One day we'll all die, and 200 years from now, everything about us on this earth will be forgotten, probably, unless we become some extremely influential historical figure, but most people will not end up in such a scenario. So I think that shows also the importance of talking about, well, life and death. Is there a life after death? Is there a soul? These questions are indeed highly relevant, because all of us know that one day we'll die, and this life is temporary. And what happens afterwards? Well, that's a very important question to consider, and the answer to that will affect literally every human being on earth.
Yes, I think this is a very important point, because as we said, if you start to think about that all things in your life that you see around you are perishable and will decay and fall apart someday, then one natural thing to ask oneself is truly everything going to fall apart, or is there something that will remain? And I think that in many religions there is this, in one form or another, the idea that not everything falls apart, but that actually something important of your life remains, and or is even permanent across all time. And in some religions this is, I think, or most often I think, it's in some form an idea of a soul. I was thinking about karma maybe, but I think there it's also some similar entity which remains intact after your body dies and decays.
Yes, in Hinduism, there is this principle of reincarnation, that you will be born again as another type of creature in the next life, and after that, a new kind of creature, etc. But also karma seems to be a principle both in Hinduism and Buddhism, I think, that if you do something bad, the badness will eventually come back to you in some way or another. And in Christianity, there is this principle that we have a soul which will survive the death of the body, and it will be judged by God and either end up in hell or heaven, or possibly purgatory in a temporal state, temporarily. And also in Christianity, there is this idea that heaven and earth will be destroyed and replaced with a new world. And if you are convinced of that, which I am, then one can also think about it. All things on this earth will also perish. It will be destroyed, including the earth itself, at one day before Judgment Day. So that's also puts things into a perspective. So from the Christian perspective, one can see how important it is to talk about sin and heaven and hell and religion and salvation, because it concerns the eternal destiny of one's soul. So from a Christian perspective, one can really see the principle that things are perishing here on earth. The conclusion of that is that we should care a lot about salvation, sin, and all that, which indeed Christianity is very much concerned about. Of course, there is this famous saying by Jesus, and that well, what does it matter if you gain the whole world but lose your soul? I think that's a very good and true thing that is said there, which people should consider.
Yes. So as we said, we will just try to both illuminate a little bit our view on this question, and then see if there are some similarities or some differences, because I still tend to think in a materialist way. So I still cannot really see how something can truly remain of me as an individual after a long time after I'm dead. But at the same time, I think, or one of the theories that I have is that the idea of the soul and of judgment after death is kind of it's a model that you can use to view the world, and if people view the world through this model, then it's actually good for them and it's good for their society, and that's why it's a good model. So what I mean by that is, if you believe that you will at some day be held responsible for the good and bad things that you do, then of course this will lead you to try to do good things and try to avoid doing bad things. And this will, in most circumstances, have already very good consequences for your life in this earth. Because if you do good things, then people around you will notice and they will remember and they will like you. Whereas if you do evil things, then people will also notice and they will also remember and they will hate you. And if you do that long enough, then oftentimes people still somehow get a revenge for, or a payback for what they deserve. Because if you do a lot of evil things and then somebody at some time will get back at you. So I think, just for example, a friend of mine read a book. It's called Mac Mafia, which is by some historian who has studied the life of people who are in the illegal markets. And many of these people get rich very quickly, but they also die very quickly. And so that's some way how payback comes in one form or another. So maybe that's a start of how I tend to view these ideas of karma and judgment and rebirth and all that.
So if I understand you correctly, you would say that to think in that way would be fruitful and productive in this life, if you think that way, regardless of whether there actually is judgment after life, if I understand you correctly.
Yes, I think that's one important part. And the other important part is also it will be fruitful for the society and for your children, because you will be concerned with, yes, it's difficult to explain that briefly, but I think it will also be fruitful for your society and your children.
Right. Yes, I would of course agree to that. That if people act well and morally and virtuously, then obviously society will be better off from that. But of course, from a Christian perspective, the most important thing will be life after death, because this is temporary and what happens later is eternal. So there is this principle in a Catholic tradition that one ought to meditate on the four last things. And the four last things, they refer to death, judgment, heaven, and hell. And if you meditate on that, then you reflect upon how important it is to concern yourself with those things. So that's also an important thing in Catholicism. So yes, I would agree that thinking in that manner is very helpful and fruitful and brings a lot of goods to society and your family, etc. And also, as we talked about earlier, you will be happy in this life if you do that. If you live a virtuous life, eventually you gain those good habits and you will like being moral. You wouldn't just do it out of fear, but you will actually have a sort of enjoyment. You will have joy in doing that, and that's a great thing. All people desire to be happy, and the way to be happy is to become virtuous and seek the good. So I think by living a truly Christian and virtuous life, you'll be happy both in this life and in the next.
Yes, and I think it's interesting because like in the one view, you say this is kind of in your view, as far as I understand it, you would see this as a positive side effect, that the things in this world will also improve if you behave in that manner. That's kind of a positive side effect. But the really important thing is that the kind of eternal part of your life that comes after your death is then on the good side and not on the bad side.
Yeah, the fundamental question is the afterlife, though of course there might be good effects in this life as well. So yeah, the first thing to consider is the afterlife, but also this life is also important, but afterlife is more important, to put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and And I see it still as that thinking in this way is it's a good model, in the sense that if people follow this model, then everything turns out well in this world. So if people follow this model, then they get, over the long term, they get the desired results, which is a good functioning society with ideally no crime and no corruption and no evil. And so that would be very desirable. And so even in science, we say that you can only judge whether a model is correct or not based on if it leads to the desired result. So that's why I tend to view it as a good model. And also I'm always reminded in this context of, I think Jordan Peterson said this, and I think C.S. Lewis also said it in one of his books, this idea that if you adhere to a certain religion, but you find that you have trouble to believe the creeds of this religion, then what they said is that you should try to act as if you believe in these creeds. So you would just ask yourself, okay, now if I were to believe, for example, that there is a day of judgment and an afterlife, then how would I act right now? And then act in this manner, no matter if you actually in the moment fully believe this creed or not. And then as you do so over time, you will realize that it's good for you and good for your life, and then belief will come to you over time. And I find that very interesting because it kind of fits together with my view of